You're listening to His Empire of Dirt by Pearlandpine. Chapter 29. Michael Afton and his friend combat mental illness like goddamn champions. The gang, Mike excluded, have been stressing over finals. Well, William excluded too, because why the hell should I stress over 'em? They're tests. I'll pass with flying colours. Shut the fuck up, darling. Yes, dear. So Mike offers to make them dinner for the night, so that they don't have to worry about crappy dining hall food or making it themselves. It's a week into December, just a bit after their heist at the casino, and Mike still doesn't know who held his hand. But he doesn't care to ask either. He knows it could have been any of them. All of them. All at once. Even Will. Even Dad. Will's appointment, the one that Clara had scheduled for him for his head, is next week. The days dawn on Mike like monstrous footsteps. From a giant. As if each thudding motion is enough to jostle him awake from the past and back into the ball pit. He can't think of his father breaking down the door. Or perhaps any of the other animatronics being functional and crawling in through the vents, or the fire burning him alive. He can't. He can't. So what he can do is make goddamn grilled cheeses and tomato soup for his friends. His friends. Because he can't think about it. He just fucking can't. Global warming, Mike, he thinks. Believe in global warming and be nice to yourself. He's arrived home. Home, he thinks. A place that he has never, not truly, because home has always been scary. Scary because of the monsters. With grocery bags over his shoulders. And when he opens the door, everyone is there, sitting on the couch. He isn't startled by this because he's expected them. But what he hasn't expected is everyone diligently sitting on the couch, awaiting his presence. He thought that they would be poring over textbooks, probably berating Will for being an asshole, telling Henry that he's going to ace the test. Don't worry. Hi, Fritz, Clara says, and he jolts at her tone of voice. Because it's not brash. It's warm. Just like Mom's was when she spoke to Evan. How are you? I'm alright. He's immediately suspicious by her doting tone of voice, and by William not immediately deadpanning something in response. And Bella is skeptically sober. And Henry doesn't greet Mike with one of his big hugs. How are you all? We're okay. Clara smiles like a doctor ready to deliver bad news, so Mike's shoulders sag as he rests the groceries on the table. We wanted to talk to you. Did I do something wrong? He had come home on more than one occasion with Dad before 1984, holding a belt. After 1985, blood on his hands, and each time he'd ask, "What did you do, Michael?" As if Mike had been the one to kill those kids, to hurt Dad. And Mike would know he had done something wrong. He had always done something wrong. Did I... Fritz, Clara interjects, and she motions for Mike to calm down. We just wanted to talk about some stuff that you've said. Mike pales. Is this a time traveler intervention? He swallows. Everything he's ever said is stupid. So stupid. He's so fucking stupid. How could he have thought he could fix anything? Fritz, take a breath, okay? Mike obeys his mother. His mother that kills herself because he's an idiot. A stupid fucking idiot that breaks things. And he shakily inhales. And slowly exhales. You didn't do anything wrong. But You're bloody suicidal, mate. William interrupts. And he starts smoking a cigarette inside. And with the interruption, Clara smacks the back of his head. What? I'm right! Well, Henry softly laments, elbowing him slightly on the side. Don't talk like that. Okay. Fritz is not suicidal. William! I will stop talking. Best idea you've had all day, Clara says, rolling her eyes and suppressing a grin that he always manages to draw from her lips. All right, so I've composed a list of times that we've been really concerned, and I'm gonna read them, if that's okay. Is that okay, hon? Mike timidly nods. Clara reaches into her pocket and begins reading. Refusal to go to the hospital, even if it meant you'd die. Saddest drunk I've ever met. Doesn't take lunch or water breaks while at work. Thinks whatever you've done is your own fault. Believes the stuff your dad told you. She clears her throat. Said you didn't think you'd make it this far. Mike absorbs all of the information and sluggishly nods. Yeah, that's me. Okay. That's okay, Fritz. Understand? Do you understand that? Mike nods again. Okay. What we're gonna establish now is that the stuff your old man says was not your fault. No matter what you did. You don't have to tell us. His eyes flicker to William's, and William doesn't spill anything, much to Mike's surprise. What happened, okay? We trust you. You're a really good person, Fritz. Okay, now, can I ask you some questions? Yeah? Yes. She speaks as if she has memorized these words out of one of her textbooks, and Mike suspects that she actually has. Do you get easily startled? Are you always on guard for danger? Do you have trouble sleeping and concentrating? Do you feel overwhelming guilt about everything? Negative thoughts? No hope about the future? And do you always think about the event and have nightmares about it? Is all of the above an option? Mike tries to giggle to lighten the mood, but he can't. The movement lost in his throat. Yes. To all of them. Fritz, Henry says, we think you're shell-shocked. Shell? Oh. Can't forget about the inhumane titles of the past. PTSD, they mean. Maybe? We don't want to go around diagnosing you or anything, Bella says. But we think it'd be useful for you to know that it's not normal to think about the stuff you do. It's not your fault, but you can't think that way for the rest of your life. It's not healthy. Mike scratches the back of his head. He thinks the floor might look comfy right about now, so he sinks to a cross-legged position with horrible posture and remains there. I don't really know how else to think. What happened? It was with my brother. It was a prank gone wrong. I know now that Evan, that my brother, that I was just a kid. It was my fault, but it was an accident.
Fritz, why'd you pull that prank on him?
Clara asks, as she sinks to her knees on the floor, gestures for permission to take his hands, but he doesn't want anyone to touch him, and she must see this, and must also understand that if she demands his hands, he will relent. So she folds her own on her lap and smiles.
Can I ask you that?
Because... Mike swallows and stares his thumbs that encircle each other. Because Dad was good at scaring people. And if I scared Evan, then he'd love me.
It was your dad's fault, Fritz. You wouldn't have done it if he didn't treat you like that. If he treated you like a father, then it never would have happened. You were a kid, so your actions are his responsibility. Do you understand that?
Mike's never considered that before.
I don't know. Was there anyone else, Fritz? You don't have to talk about it.
Charlotte, Susie, Jeremy, Gabriel, Fritz, Cassidy, Liz, Mom, Henry, my Jeremy, Henry. Everyone, he says, and he starts choking back tears. A lot of people got hurt because I didn't tell anyone about my dad. My sister died, and my mom killed herself, and Jeremy got...
Fritz, it's okay. It's okay, hon. Can you find a common denominator that there isn't yourself? Because you were a kid, Fritz. None of it is your fault.
Yes. Yes, it is. I lied.
What's the common denominator, sweetie?
Me?
Search for something else. Something bigger. Something bad.
Dad?
Dad?
Clara gently smiles and nods her head.
But my dad is the smartest person. You're a lot smarter than him, hon. You're smart enough to know how to be a good person.
Mike unintendedly laughs. I am not smarter than... Yes, you are, William says from the back, exhaling smoke into the air. You are. There are a lot of ways to be smart, Henry notes, trying not to show his anxiety. A lot of ways. And I know you think me and Will are smart, but that's just in a few things. We're dumb in a lot of other ways, too. Mike turns to William, expecting him to say, "Speak for yourself, bastard." But instead, he just continues to smoke.
It's really, really concerning the way you think and speak, Fritz. You've got to know that it's not your fault. That you feel these things, but it is your responsibility on how you react to things, you know? Not like something reminding you of your dad, but you get to choose how to talk to yourself. Could you do me a favor?
Clara takes out a paper and pen and slides them to Mike on the floor.
I want you to list compliments about yourself.
Compliments?
Nice things, you know? All about you.
Mike stares at the blank piece of paper before shrugging.
I don't know. Well, then we'll start.
Clara gently takes the paper and scribbles something. She proudly shows it to Mike. Hardest worker I know. She hands it to Bella. Really good listener. To Henry. Selfless.
To William, a pause, and then a determined scribbling. Decent. Mike takes the paper and pen and stares at those 9 words, tears threatening the edges of his eyes. The last person to tell him he had any worth that he really believed had been Jeremy. And that had been decades and decades ago. A lifetime ago. Mike pushes the pen to the paper, and like the ghost of his old boyfriend is riding through him, he writes. Creative, determined, believes in second chances, tall and strong, handsome, protector, trying to be better. Is this okay? Oh, Fritz, Clara's beaming. It's wonderful. I am so proud of you. He doesn't know the last time his mom had said that to him. Without realizing, he reaches for her hand, and she takes him, and she uses his shoulder to wipe away tears that never stop falling. Thank you, he says. And he wants to add Mom at the end of his thanks, but of course he cannot. So he just pretends that his mom is in the room, truly herself, alive, telling him that Evan wasn't his fault. She's not going to leave him alone with Dad, not ever. She left me with him, he stammers, hanging his head. She left me with Dad because... It wasn't your fault, dear, Clara says, humming gently. A song that Mike thinks that William has hummed to him before. It's not your fault at all. You were just a kid, and it was his fault. I'm not just innocent. Dad was guilty. I wish I was a better brother. I know, Fritz. I know. Can I make grilled cheeses now? Clara lightly laughs. Sure, hon. I'll help you, okay? She takes his hand and leads him into the kitchen, and the monotonous task of putting groceries away and ingredients in the pan calms his nerves, as the New Testament of life echoes all throughout the chamber in his brain. It's Dad's fault. It's Dad's fault. It's Dad's fault. Would Evan think it was Dad's fault? As Mike threw him into Fredbear's jaw and allowed it to clamp down on him, as Dad fruitlessly tried to save Evan, as Dad proclaimed to the world and to his eldest that it was Mike's fault. But Mike wouldn't have done it if Dad had just loved him like he was supposed to. Thank you, Clara, Mike mutters as he slices bread in half. The rest of the group had mercifully returned to their studies, Bella lying on Henry's lap, William taking his smoking into the hallway. Don't mention it, Fritz. It was William's idea, after all. Mike's eyes widen, and he wipes away his tears as he sears the bread in the pan, Clara handing him a slab of butter. That was nice of him. You're rubbing off something awfully on him, Fritz, I think. Clara chuckles to herself as she puts plates out on the table. I'm really proud of you, you know. I'm really, really proud of you. She squeezes Mike's shoulder, and he smiles, and out loud he says, It was Dad's fault. And Clara nods approvingly, and grilled cheeses are created. And when William returns to the hallway, Mike catches his eye, expecting smugness and grandiosity. But instead, William just snuffs out his cigarette, nodding. "Ready, Will?" Clara asks about a week later. William had been pacing about the apartment as if hyping himself up to sprint an entire marathon.
"No, Mom," he earnestly says, bouncing from his heels to his toes. "Fritz ought to come. I need my emotional support animal."
Clara rolls her eyes. "Fritz, you'd like to come?"
Mike nods. Of course he does. This placates William just a bit, and he goes to slip on his shoes and grab his jacket, the December weather bearing down onto Utah like a menace. Clara offers to drive them. William mimics praying to God that they'll make it out of the car alive, so she slaps him on the chest and customarily rolls her eyes. Mike can't help but think that this could be it. The moment that makes or breaks everything he's worked to accomplish. But there's a small voice in the back of his head that says, "It's okay. Let him go. It's never been your fault. He has to choose to be better." Mike will always be the hero, though. So he slips on his shoes and follows them to the car.
"I'm afraid that the only family members may be able to stay in during the questioning,"
the doctor with a German accent and large spectacles say. They've arrived in a sterile building about 20 minutes away. Mike disastrously presumed that the people in line waiting would be fellow psychopaths and future child murderers, but he supposes he ought to confront his own biases, because there were only a handful of people there. A local politician, a father of 3, a woman whom Mike thought he had seen at Junior's a few times, a little girl drawing on a piece of paper, an old man reading the newspaper through his bifocals. Mike doesn't think any of them are killers. And if they are, shit, they're good actors too. Dad had always been the best actor, though. "Well," William says, and when he goes to light a cigarette, the doctor narrows his eyes at him, so he reluctantly puts it away. "This is my fiancée, and this is my brother."
"Really?"
"Yes, and I'm offended you can't see the similarities between Fritz and me, as well as the love I hold for my future wife."
He takes Clara and holds her close, and she presents a dazzling smile instead of rebuking William, and Mike thinks that they really are made for each other.
"Well, my apologies. If you'd follow me then?"
William looks like he wants to smile in victory, but instead he just shudders as he walks through the doors, as if they are the gateway to hell. Inside the room, there is a coffee machine on a table, a Freudian-esque couch, a table with a few chairs, and that is all. It's stuffy, Mike thinks, but he can't imagine anything pertaining to mental health in the 50s will have a grand budget.
"Make yourself comfortable, Miss Miller, Mr. Miller. If you could please sit a ways away and have Mr. Miller speak for himself, that would be wonderful."
Mike's taken aback by the surnames, but then he recalls that the entire thing is anonymous, so he figures that William had given a false name. "Sure," Mike says, but he's shaking as he brings a chair to the wall, sitting next to Clara. She reaches for his hand, and she's also trying not to shake, so they hold each other's hands and bring each other stability. William sits at the end of the couch and holds a cigarette between his fingers without lighting it.
"Is this the part where you put electrodes in my brain?"
The doctor chuckles a bit at that.
"No, sir. I will be blunt with you. I have many colleagues that would adore that. I have seen prefrontal lobe."
Mike shudders at the words. trying not to think of the tape's dialogue. Then there was the bite of 87. Yeah, it's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know.
Surgery is completed that leaves the victims entirely invalid. I have no plans for that.
Wonderful.
William cannot decide on folding his legs across one another or spreading them on the couch, resorting to restlessly bouncing them on the floor. Eventually, he stands, asking,
May I smoke? Or does that count as points against me?
The doctor withdraws a pad and paper.
Is smoking a coping mechanism for you, Mr. Miller?
I'd like a yes or no if I'm being candid.
Yes, Mr. Miller. You may smoke.
Brilliant.
With a shaking hand, and Mike's eyes widen because Dad's hands don't shake, and neither do Will's. Not really. He withdraws his lighter and lights the end of his cigarette, barely calming as he exhales smoke.
Now, your fiancée referred you to me, yes?
William nods.
Fantastic. Miss Miller, are you familiar with the work of Dr. John Cade?
No, sir.
Well, a few years ago, at the end of 49, he observed that lithium calmed irate guinea pigs. Introducing lithium-based medication has seemed to prove effective for those of manic proportions. Of course, we must speak to Dr. Carl Leonhardt, colleague of mine back home, indeed, who noted the difference between unipolar and bipolar depression. We've come a long way in psychopharmacology, Miss Miller, but not nearly far enough. There are some, especially you Americans.
Oi, don't you call me a bloody American.
The doctor chuckles a bit.
There are some that would want to lock you away just for demonstrating concern about your own mania. This initial meeting, really, is just to establish good graces, and for you to understand that I have no intentions of butchering your brain.
Like to see you do worse than anything I've already done,
William says with a snort, but the sentiment seems to calm him, at least a little bit.
I'd like you to fill out this form. Beforehand, though, a simple question. Do you believe in a biological or a psychoanalytical approach, Mr. Miller?
I don't see why I can't have something crossed with my DNA and my soul, I suppose. Both, I'd say.
The doctor notes that.
Eugene Bleuler wrote of the manic depression and Freud spoke of the childhood traumas.
Oh, then Freud's researched the goddamn gold mine with me, Doctor.
William laughs to himself as he turns his attention to the form. After several minutes, he hands the paper to Mike and Clara without asking the doctor for permission.
They've got to read it over,
he plainly states. And Mike knows it's because he needs Clara to trust him, because Clara's in charge, because he loves Clara, because Mike is his best friend. Mike made a promise, because William made a promise. Because reading this can prove that somewhere between the scribbles and words that William Afton is sick but decent.
1. Have you ever been subject to elevated moods? Yes or no? 2. Do you have grand feelings of grandiosity? Yes or no? 3. Do you feel you have special powers that others do not? Yes or no? 4. Do you feel a special connection with God? Yes or no? 5. Do you feel yourself to be God? Yes or no? 6. Do you consider yourself to be special? Yes or no? 7. Do you find your thoughts racing? Yes or no? 8. Do you find it hard to stop talking? Always, sometimes, never. 9. Do you get sufficient sleep? Yes or no? 10. Do you frequently have brilliant ideas? Yes or no? 11. Do you feel an affinity for dangerous activities? Yes or no? 12. If you have answered yes to anything above, how long have these thoughts lasted? A few hours? A few days? Weeks to months? Number 13. Do you come from a loving home? Yes or no? Number 14. At what age did these thoughts manifest? 5 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 plus. 15. Do you believe you have a healthy support system? Yes or no? 1. Yes. 2. Yes. 3. Yes. 4. No. 5. Yes. 6. Yes. 7. Yes. 8. Sometimes. 9. No. 10. Yes. 11. Yes. 12. A few days. 13. No. 14. 11 to 15. 15. Yes. With no crossed out.
Clara nods and hands the paper to the doctor. The doctor scans it over, humming to himself. William looks like he's been caught red-handed by the police, nearly crushing the cigarette in his grasp.
And this is candid, Mr. Miller?
Yes,
William says breathlessly.
is it circular insanity? That's what the textbooks say, you know, that...
Mr. Miller, I am not going to diagnose you based off of this. I cannot legally. Thank you very much for coming in today. I will be getting back to you, if that is sufficient.
That's it?
That's it. If you really are worried, I'd like to give you the card of a trusted American colleague of mine. She returns after the holidays from abroad. Psychoanalyst. I think you'll benefit, especially if you are truly lamenting the state of your brain.
William takes the card as he stands, staring at it.
Will this make me normal?
What is normal, yes?
William rolls his eyes.
Bloody Germans.
He mutters under his breath, and the doctor laughs some more.
I will be in contact, Mr. Miller. Have a happy Christmas and New Year.
Yeah.
William stares at the card as he walks out of the room, Mike and Clara lingering behind.
You are his support system, yes? Us and a couple of our friends, Clara answers. I like to ask this question of the family. Do you think yourselves to be in danger around Mr. Miller?
No, Clara immediately answers. The doctor turns to Mike. Mike takes too long to answer. No. And the doctor notices this and nods.
The paper is scored. You and I, we would perhaps score somewhere between 1 and 3. He has gotten the highest score one may attain. After this trial, I believe I will work to get him prescribed mood stabilizers.
He hums some more.
The most important thing in this instance, like this, I believe, is to have a good support system. People fall off far less. Please be there for him in this time.
Clara nods and rushes after William. But Mike stays and asks, Doctor, do you think that if someone gets help for their head, that they'll be a good person?
I think souls are entirely different from biology, Mr. Miller.
The doctor pours himself a cup of coffee.
We all must make our own decisions at the end of the day.
Mike stiffly nods and exits the building. When he meets Clara and William in the car, William is staring at the card the doctor had given him.
I don't like Germans,
he mutters to himself, stuffing the card in his pocket. He desperately reaches for Clara's hand, calming when he finds it much sooner than he found the cigarette. That night, after dinner, after studying, Mike finds himself with William once more staring at the card in his bedroom.
You all right?
Mike asks. William sighs.
Do you think I'll be decent once I get up for this?
I think you've got to choose what you want to do.
I'd like...
He sighs again.
Everything I want is vile more than the things on the paper that the doctor wrote. All those people in that office, they have their wires crossed too. But they don't think the things I feel. Fritz, wanting to kill people isn't bloody mania. It's depravity.
He hangs his head.
I just want to be decent, Fritz. I got to be. I'll be bloody miserable for the rest of my life if it means I get to be decent. I don't want to hurt the lot of you. I don't. I don't want to have a fucking episode and hurt anyone. I just want the bloody bombs to go away. But they...
Mike invites himself to sit at the edge of the bed. He swallows. Dad wasn't my fault, right?
William nods.
Your dad wasn't your fault either, Will. You were just a kid. You didn't make the war happen, it happened to you. And it was the worst shit. And we'll get through both of it together. We'll both win. We'll both be better.
Okay.
He sounds like a little kid. Like the little boy Mike had once promised to protect.
Do you promise?
I promise.
William nods. I just want to be better. I can't live like this anymore. I just want to be alive, Fritz. I just want everyone to live.
I feel pretty alive. Don't you?
William rests his hand on his heart. And after a few moments, he nods. And Christ, Mike has really decided, for maybe the first time in his life, that he really wants to live. He really wants to see this through. He needs a happy ending more than anything in the world.